Serious criminals are being allowed to stay in the UK thanks to appeals under the European Convention on Human Rights.
There have been widely reported examples. They include the Portuguese drug dealer who's been allowed to stay because a judge ruled that deporting him, get this, would upset his mum. And the Albanian criminal reportedly staying because the UK will help support his child's suspected special educational needs.
Well, those are stories which have been reported, and now the Justice Secretary is asking European ministers to overhaul the European Convention on Human Rights, which comes as an ITV News investigation reveals at least 2 Brazilian men wanted for serious crimes, include murder and child abuse, are being allowed to stay in the UK. Well, ITV News' UK editor Paul Brand, who's behind that investigation, joins us now. I think people will be feeling sick to their stomachs watching your report, particularly this Marlon Martins dos Santos, clearly a risk to children here, and in fact convicted and imprisoned here after he was found in possession of these horrific child abuse images. If he was jailed in April 2025 this year, when's he getting out?
Well, he's been given several years in prison. He's still here, by the way, because we haven't deported him back to a Brazilian prison. He's here at taxpayers' expense, £50,000 or so a year that we're paying to keep him in prison here after he fled to the UK. But I think, you know, at the heart of all of this, nobody's saying that human rights aren't important, right? We all want to protect our human rights. It's about whether the balance here has been thrown out, whether we're giving too much emphasis to the rights of a paedophile, because he might be mistreated in a Brazilian prison, over the rights of a child not to be abused here in the UK by a prolific offender. And that, I think, is at the heart of this debate about reforming the European Convention on Human Rights. Is it being applied in the right way, even if we believe, most people probably do, in the convention itself and what it's trying to uphold?
Some claims against being deported have more credibility than others. We refer to the Portuguese drug dealer, whose mother would be upset if he was deported. Here, we've got allegations of torture. If either of these men go back to Brazil, there are quite strong allegations that they would be very harshly treated. Now, a lot of people would say, I don't care. But that is something which I guess judges do have to weigh in the balance.
Yeah, and there are problems with Brazilian prisons, OK? This is not made up. There are issues of overcrowding. There have been executions in prisons. I mean, we've obviously got problems with our own prisons here, too. We've got overcrowding, we've got violence. People do end up getting murdered in prison here, too. So, look, this is a genuine problem with Brazilian jails. But, again, it comes back to that balance of risk. What is the greater risk? To harbour an alleged murderer or a convicted child abuser in the UK, or to send them back to Brazil, where they may have a rough time in prison, but at least people in the UK are then safe from them reoffending. Can
I ask you about this guy De Brito, who we saw on camera there, the guy who runs this moped repair business?
Yes.
How sort of enmeshed and embedded is he in life here? For example, does he pay UK taxes, do you know? Does he pay VAT? Does he pay commercial taxes? Does he pay income tax? Does he pay council tax?
He's got a registered business, that garage that you talked about there. I mean, I should say he denies all of the charges against him, by the way. That's partly why he's fighting his extradition. But we do have evidence that we believe that he lied to a judge. He said that he was married to a Portuguese man and that part of the issue with being sent back to Brazil would be he would be mistreated in a Brazilian prison. Actually, we believe he has a wife. And, in fact, he told our undercover reporters he does have a wife and son. And when I doorstepped him, when I confronted him in his van, there was a woman sitting in the front that matches the description of the woman that we believe is his wife. He wouldn't answer whether or not.
So he's a liar?
Well, allegedly.
Yeah, OK. Is he a dangerous man?
I mean, the accusation is that he ordered a gang shooting of a rival in Brazil. So I think the Brazilian authorities certainly say that he is dangerous. I mean, they are horrified that he's still in the UK. They think it's absolutely bonkers that he hasn't been extradited. They think he's a risk to people here in the United Kingdom. I mean, he's got a long history, they say, of gang violence. It wasn't just sort of a one-off event here. Again, you know, he denies these charges. We've got to be fair to him on that. But nevertheless, like I say, Brazilian authorities are really frustrated they can't get him back.
The government is very aware this is a hot potato. It's my understanding that the Conservatives have an issue with the ECHR and propose changes, or at least you know, tinkering with it in some way. Reform would get rid of it altogether.
Yeah.
Is Kemi Baid not committed to withdrawing from the ECHR?
So we've interviewed her, actually, about our findings, which will be broadcasting later today, and she says this is further evidence that it's persuading her of the need to leave the ECHR altogether.
But Reform would take us out?
Reform would pull out.
OK.
100%. Kemi Badenoch says she's leaning towards pulling out, but she's having a review to make up her mind about what to do.
Got that. But, meanwhile, the Lord Chancellor is going to tell the Council of Europe Committee of Ministers reform is needed. Yeah. And presumably, particularly over these two articles, Article 3, you can't send someone back because they might be tortured or treated badly, and Article 8, if you've got family here, you can't be sent back. But those do seem to be the two articles which protect too many nasties staying here.
Yeah, exactly. And this is essentially the fight back from people in the centre of politics or the centre-left of politics, is to reform the ECHR rather than to pull out altogether, to throw the baby out with the bathwater, essentially, is what they would argue. And you're absolutely right. Article 8 and Article 3 are the issues. They've added in Article 3 last night in response to our investigation. A lot of the focus is on Article 8, the right to a family life. That's like coming up in the cases that you've mentioned, Richard, about, you know, a mother being upset, or there's the example, isn't there, about the kids not liking their food in different countries or whatever. Yeah, exactly. But Article 3 is a really, really big issue, particularly in the cases we've investigated, this idea that you shouldn't be mistreated abroad. And so they've added that one in since last night.
When we say reform on those two particular articles, it seems to me that that can only mean dropping them. I mean, because how could you... You either have them in or you don't.
It's about the application of them as well. So one of the arguments is that judges here are being too stringent in their application of the European Convention on Human Rights. They're not balancing the public interest against those rights, for example, like in the cases we've exposed. Balancing the safety of British people against the rights of those criminals.
They're taking too narrow a view.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one way they could reform it.
Paul, well done.
Good work.
It's brave work you're doing, because confronting individuals like this takes a lot of courage. And it sounds like your reporting, from what you're saying, is having a direct impact on what the government is now consulting on, because it is a massive political issue. And I think any right-minded viewer watching these two cases would think this is absolutely outrageous. You cannot have children at risk here in this country because the person doesn't want to face the consequences back in the country he came from. The Home Office says foreign nationals who commit crimes should be in no doubt that we will do everything to make sure they are not free to roam Britain's streets, including removing them from the UK at the earliest possible opportunity. Extradition is a largely judicial process. That's the key. It's not down to the Home Office, is it? You see
already they're pushing it onto the judges.
They're pushing it onto the judges,
interpretation of the law, right? That's where they're going with it.
So you've got to change the ECHR and then the judges could apply it differently.
Exactly.
Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed.